Hello and welcome to the next in our series of videos in which we're giving you some tips as to how to campaign. Justin Tomlinson is with me from Conservative Print, former Conservative Member of Parliament and one of the most prolific campaigners I've ever come across. We're talking this time, Justin, about leaflets, the importance of leaflets. It's still the old-fashioned but best way of campaigning, isn't it?
Yes, I mean there's all sorts of different ways to campaign, but it is a guaranteed way to get something through a letterbox and communicate your positive, tangible message to the electorate.
Right, let's talk about the range of leaflets that you need throughout a campaign, because they differ, they vary depending on what stage you're at.
Yeah, so over a 12-month cycle, you've got update newsletters, they can be A4, A5, A3, magazines. And then once you move into the election cycle, you're looking at your traditional election leaflets, endorsement postcards, postal and pledge letters or cards, calling cards, GOTV cards. And the beauty with us is we've got thousands and thousands of examples of absolutely everything, and it's one of the first things we get asked by particularly new customers. We're looking to do an update, have you got any examples we can have a look at? And that will often spark an interest, and sometimes somebody will say, we want to do exactly like theirs, or we like the front cover of this one and the reverse of this one. And that's the beginning of the design journey for leaflets.
Now, I know that one thing you're passionate about is photos, how important photographs are in a leaflet. Less is more when it comes to words. Give some tips to people about the best photos.
Well, it's making sure that you as the candidate are big in those pictures, so you become recognised as part of that sort of community action team, having variety, particularly in the clothes being worn, the locations, and if you're highlighting something, the sign of something to be big. So again, somebody who's scanning over that leaflet can see what it is you're trying to portray, and having a lot of variety. So one of the tips that we give is take lots of photos, and lots of different photos in the same location, because if you know you're going to be talking about schools, for example, many times over the 12-month cycle, have a variety of pictures, and then we can swap those over on each of the different leaflets throughout the 12-month cycle.
If you're someone who's never put a leaflet together before, you're a first-time candidate maybe, it's all a bit daunting, you know, what do I need, what sort of paper will it be printed on, what will it look like, but you can hold hands throughout that entire
Absolutely.
process.
So we'll have that conversation at the beginning, and it's partly driven by how much content you want to put. The more content, the more photos, the bigger the leaflet needs to be. It's also looking at how best to use your budget. And then we can give examples of the types of text, the types of narrative that different places are using that you can then adapt to your own local area. So we do all of that with you, and then once that's ready, we then present that to the design team, and the design team will then create something bespoke for either you as a candidate or for your association and collective of candidates.
We're going to talk to one of your designers in just a moment, but just a few quick tips. People often forget the imprint, the legal bit that goes at the bottom.
Promoted by, contact details, that's often forgotten. The header, do you want to call it, after the local ward, the local area? And also remembering that if you're going to have photographs, make sure you haven't used all the space up with text. If you've got an A4 leaflet, don't give us a double-sided A4 set of text and then say, please fit all those things and photos in. You need to allow some space. And name your photographs by the title of the article. So when the designer's looking at putting the picture of John in, and you're thinking, which one's John? Make sure it's just named after the article. And then it's a very, very quick process. The proof is sent back. If you're happy with the proof, it then goes to print. If we need to make changes, we do those. And it's a very, very quick process until you're happy to sign it off.
And I'm going to add one final thing. Always include the date of the election. Do not assume voters know when the election date is.
And again, we will cast our eye over things when they come in, and we will spot a lot of these things, and we will then get all that right, because our plan is to try and be right on the first proof we send, because generally people come to us needing leaflets yesterday, so the faster we can do those sorts of things, the quicker you can get your leaflets back ready for delivery.
You spoke from bitter experience with me as a candidate and one of your customers. Right, let's speak to someone at the sharp end who knows everything there is to know about designing the perfect leaflet. Well, someone who knows more than there is to know about designing a leaflet, Andy Dickinson, who has been at this game for centuries, basically. I can remember my first foray into politics, and Andy was designing the leaflets. He's now working with Justin at Conservative Print. And it's good to see you actually in person and not just having to look at many, many photographs of me, for which I apologise, Andy.
That's quite all right.
We've talked a bit, Justin and I, already about the importance of leaflets, but the design is incredibly important for that impact when it lands on someone's doormat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that short space of time you've got between either having it put in your hand or picking up from the welcome mat, and you just have a few seconds just to get that engagement, just to get that sort of interest. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Not only in the content, but in the photography and, importantly, the visuals.
So, I'm a first-time candidate. I'm obviously using conservative print to do my leaflets, and Justin's, that's all right, 10% later. And Justin's coming to you to do the design. What do you need from me, Andy? How much stuff do you need? And is it my responsibility to get all the words and the photos right, or will you and Justin help me on that?
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to think about what you want to say, what your overall message is, and how you might want to split that up into different either articles or bullet points, or what's your overall message. And then you can go to Justin and he would be able to point you in the right direction in terms of content, in terms of how much information you want to put out, because you've got to consider, if I'm doing a 4-page A4, that is going to be essentially an A3 folded or something of that sort of size and content, you need to think, how much do I need to put into this? Will it be enough, or do I actually have too much information that I'm trying to push into something that just can't carry that kind of weight? So I think it's very important to go.
Sorry to interrupt, Andy, but that's the mistake that we've been speaking about, that so many people make. They try to put too much stuff, and particularly too much text, in a leaflet, don't they? And you can't do that.
That is sadly all too often the case. You've got to sort of think, well, in terms of impact, if I put too little in, will that look a bit sparse? No, because you fill it up with the headlines, you fill it up with the photographs, and that's, if you want to say, okay, there's a bit more to read that you might want to sit down and look at later, then that's absolutely fine, and that can be really useful. But you have to consider most people will give it, if you're lucky, 5 minutes. And they just need to read the headlines and go, okay, that's relevant to me, I'll read this section. Or that's not something that interests me, so I'll skip that bit. But you need to be able to visually navigate your way around that particular material.
And suppose you're a first-time candidate, never been elected to anything before. You might be thinking, I've got nothing to say, I've got nothing to put in my leaflets, I've got no photographs of me running the Residents Association or picking up the litter. How do you fill a leaflet in those circumstances?
Well, there's lots of ways we can do that. I mean, bad photography is better than no photography in a lot of cases, but sometimes it would be better, especially if you're doing reasons to vote for me or things I'm going to do in my area. You can do that with icons, with different colours, like Justin was saying. You can use it as just something you can visually sort of look at, and it doesn't become too cluttered. You can always go strong with headlines and with pictures if you have them, but it's certainly you don't always get that time to grab somebody's attention.
And that's why we have like sort of starter packs about core, relatively generic issues. And then once a candidate's selected, that can be the default at the beginning. And then as they get to grow within their community, identifying very local, tangible issues, they can then adapt that. But the key thing is to give Andy and our design team space to design. So that's why less is more in terms of text. The importance of good quality pictures, because again, that can be high impact. And then it's how Andy will then shape the colours, the layout, those high impact bits. And it's also the time of the year. So with my Swindon campaign hat on, will often do longer leaflets with more text just before the election, in effect setting out a manifesto in detail. But once we hit the formal election cycle, that's when everything is sort of shrunk down, because residents are going to be bombarded with literature, and it's all about that high impact. So the pressure's then on Andy to make something a wow feature that people, as they pick it up off the letterbox, think, I do want to engage with this leaflet, and that can then be the difference to get candidates over the line.
And Andy, from a design point of view, having worked with you over many years, things that you don't think are important really are, like the way a leaflet is folded and the way therefore it lands on someone's doormat. It's no good if you're folding a sheet of A4 paper into thirds, for instance, having a headline that doesn't fit on the bit that's folded at the front. And but the beauty of working with someone like you and working with Justin is I, as the candidate, don't have to worry about that because you'll sort that out for me, yes?
Exactly. And if we can't, if you've got an idea and you say we want to do it like this, of course we can discuss it. We'll go through and find out the best way to make that work. But like you're saying, yeah, it's to have something slightly different land on your doormat that's slightly differently folded, or it has a different impact, or a different look, but carries the same message is really important. So you don't, for example, think I've seen this before and then throw it away, when in actual fact it's something that's quite different in terms of content. But yeah, Justin's right. We often do get out to vote cards, which are more impactful, short, punchy kind of, this is your day to vote, this is your chance to make a difference. And then we reiterate the key points that we've sort of already laid the trail for originally. But yeah, it's certainly about creating a visual language and then conveying that in the most direct and personable way that you can.
And the suite of literature, for want of a less pompous phrase, that you might have throughout a campaign, you guys can supply all of that, because you might want to start with a fairly basic leaflet introducing yourself, then go to more sophisticated stuff, and then towards the end, just a postcard size thing to put through somebody's door as a calling card.
And that's what we will discuss in advance. Different candidates, different associations will have different capacity. So some may only want one or two leaflets, some will want a whole suite of leaflets over a 12-month cycle. And we will look at some of the existing templates that we've done before as a starting point, or create something completely bespoke. And what we find is once we've done the first wave of jobs for a new association or a new candidate, Andy and the design team will actually know what it is that they like, and it becomes a lot easier to do future leaflets. And it's a very, very quick process. But from my perspective, if you're going to spend good money on print, thank you for all of those of you who do, make it look as good as it can, because the design elements, that in effect the smallest part of the process, but arguably the most important part.
Let me be controversial, if I may, guys. Nearly everyone nowadays has pretty much the capacity to design a leaflet on their laptop, right, sitting in their home office, because we've all got those apps and those software and those design tools. Why should they come to someone like you? Why don't they just sit on their dining room table and do it themselves?
Well, firstly, from my perspective, it is because if you're going to spend that much money on print, on delivery, on posting them out, make sure it is the very, very best thing. It's a bit like, I would love to be a Premier League footballer. It's never going to happen, right? Leave it to the professionals. And I've used Andy for well over 20 years. I remember the 2005 general election, myself and Robert Buckland sat in an office with sort of 2 hours notice to try and pull everything together. It is just worth making your leaflet better than the opposition. And in all of my years of local elections and general elections, there's been a number where we just got over the line. And that's because we've got the better quality leaflets that are more likely to engage with residents.
Just want to do a final practical thing. When a candidate wants a leaflet, do you give them a template to work from and say you've got to fit your photos and text to that? Or do you just ask them for anything and then you come up with the template that fits into?
Well, I think it's very much a little bit of everything there. We can, if you need to know, if you've got a really strong idea about what you want, we can absolutely work with that. If you've got, if you want to be led a little bit, you can say, okay, here's a few examples of what you can do. Here's a template that would work really well with the amount of things you want to say, the points you want to make, and your cost and time and everything else in terms of what you want to put out in that window. So we would give you a template, you would give us the information, and then we would make it fit. So it's very unlikely that we'll be able to say, no, we can't do this, it just won't work. We'll work with Justin in terms of content and me in terms of making it fit. There's no real template, they're just a guide to give you a sort of visual idea where you might want to start.
And talking of visual ideas, you are the living embodiment currently of always have a dog in a photo, because your dog's and I have to say,
he's
borrowed
now there.
There he is. I once borrowed somebody's dog
You did?
to have photographs taken for a council campaign. Always works in photos. Andy, thank you very much indeed. Andy Dickinson from...
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you.